Good morning and welcome to the first of 4 videos for Renee's House of Quilting Spring Club. As you know, we're doing 4 table runners. 2 of them will use the 4-in-1 triangle ruler and 2 of them will use the clipped corner ruler. The one that we're going to go over today is the ring toss table runner, and that uses the 4-in-1 triangle quilt ruler. So this is the beautiful table runner, and what you're going to need for this project is you're going to need, first of all, you're going to need some spray starch. I highly recommend that you spray your fabrics with spray starch and iron them before you cut them. That way you have a fabric that's not so limp. You're going to be dealing with some bias edges, so if you spray starch your fabric first, you're doing yourself a big favor. The next thing that you need are you need a mechanical pencil. This one is from the dollar store. You need that for marking your half square triangles. I use a piece of sandpaper, so a piece of sandpaper is helpful. Obviously you're going to need this ruler. This is from Creative Grids and it's the 4-in-1 triangle ruler. This ruler also comes with instructions. This one has 4 methods included. If you happen to lose your instructions or misplace them, you can go to creativegrids.com and they have all of the instructions for all of their rulers. You will need 36 5-inch squares. So if you purchase a charm pack, usually they have 42 squares in, so you have a few left over. So you need 36 of the colored ones. And for the background, you're going to need 12 5-inch squares of whatever you choose for your background fabric. You also need a cutting mat and a rotary cutter. The block that you make for this table runner consists of 2 hourglass squares, 2 half square triangles. This is the block that you make. When you alternate this block, this gives you the ring, hence the ring toss name for the pattern. Grab your pattern so you can follow along and make any notes when you are listening to my video, so that when you begin to sew this together, you'll be successful. The pattern tells you to follow the instructions included with the Creative Grids ruler, method number 3, to construct half square triangles. What you do is you take your 4-in-1 triangle ruler and you lay it on your 5-inch square. I have a cutting mat, my piece of sandpaper, my 5-inch square, in my ruler. You want to line it up so that this dark line, this solid black line, is right in the corner of the 5-inch square and down here in the corner. Line it up along the edge so that the edge of the ruler is right along the 5-inch square. Then you take your pencil, and you want to use a mechanical pencil because you can get very close to the edge, and you draw a line along here, and then you'll see these slots, and there's a little black line there. They want you to start up close to that slot, right up at the top, and draw another line. What these lines are the lines that you use to stitch on. This is what your 5-inch square should look like after you have drawn those stitching lines. Take the 2 colored 5-inch squares, the one that you have marked on and another one, and you're going to place them right sides together. You're going to line your edges up as accurately as you can. Go to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch along both of these lines. I've stitched along both of these lines, but as you can see, I've stitched not right on top of the line, but alongside of it, in the seam allowance, that side of it. Then you're going to cut these apart and press them. So I put the ruler along the seam line, the the dark line of the ruler along the seam line and cut them apart. Now I have two half square triangles. This is where I believe they left off a step, so I will show you what they were missing here. Here's the two half square triangles that we made in the first step. I pressed both seams towards the dark. Then what you need to do is take one, lay it right side up, and put the other one over it. Can you see how I have the dark over the light and the light over the dark? That's important because what we're making is this hourglass. And in order for us to have opposites here, we need to have opposites here. You know that you have this positioned right when you lay your ruler, the 4-in-1 triangle ruler on there. Can you see how you're making an X? Just like that. Then again, you're going to take and trace along the outside and trace on the inside of that slot so that you've got that. Now you have your sewing line or your stitching lines again, and you're going to stitch again just to the inside, so not along this line but just alongside of it on the seam allowance side of it. I've stitched both of those lines, making sure that this seam butted up with the seam underneath, and the reason for that is you want this point here to match. I tried doing it the way that she suggested, pressing these seams open, and that makes it more difficult to get those seams to butt up there. So I would suggest that you press both seams towards the dark. Once again, cut those two apart by laying the solid line on your stitched seam line. Cut them apart, and now you have two. When you open this up, you have an hourglass, and the points match very nicely. Don't press this open yet. We're going to trim this down. These are oversized, which is nice. She had you make these with a 5-inch square to have a 3.5-inch half square triangle finished. So these are oversized. So we haven't trimmed anything yet, but I want to show you how to trim these. She tells you in your instructions to lay the 3.5-inch, because these are 3.5-inch finished. All of the markings on this ruler are the finished measurements, so that you have to get that through your head. So I put a pink piece of tape here to remind me that this is where I need to line up that white line, that white dashed line along my seam line, and you go just above it, so it's almost like you stitch this twice. There's a center line. You line that up with the vertical stitch line, and then the horizontal dashed line that's at 3.5, you line that up with your stitching line of the two triangles that you sewed together. Then take your rotary cutter and cut along those lines, removing this little bit that you don't need. Now you can open this up and press it. I pressed it so that the seam was open on the back. That decreases some of the bulk, and it gives you a nice flat hourglass block. For this table runner, you need 24 hourglass blocks. So again, start with method 3, that those instructions come with the ruler when you purchase it. Continue through method 3 so that you get 2 half square triangles. Then, like I said, she moves on to the next step, but she doesn't tell you how to get to that next step. And I just showed you that by telling you to place opposites together. Place the dark over the light over the dark. And you should have an X. Sew those, draw your lines, stitch those, and then you're going to get this. So I placed the dark over the light, I made that X, stitched it, and now I trim it. Don't trim anything until you get to this step. Then you'll have 2 of these hourglass blocks. Each one of these blocks in your table runner takes 2 of these. So I kept the ones that were matching together. So you can see that here's the hourglass block with the purple, and here's its mate over here. And I'll review one more time how you trim this block. I've left it, as you can see, folded together, right sides together. I've lined, there's a white dashed line at the 3.5 inch mark. Place that white dashed line right over your seam line, like that. And then the dark line that runs vertically, so it starts at the point and runs down, that needs to follow along the vertical seam that's in those half square triangles. Once you have that all lined up, then you're going to take your rotary cutter and cut that excess off the edge, and then that leaves you a nice, perfectly trimmed hour block. I do my final pressing of this block. I use this Easy Press fabric treatment. It's from Acorn Products, and I just spray this lightly, and I just wanted to show you the difference. See how this one lies flat and this one is still a little puffy? Just give it a light spray, press it from the right side, and it'll make it nice and flat. Either take your rotary cutter and trim those little dog ears off, or you can just trim them off with your scissors, but remove those little dog ears. To make that half square triangle block, again, line your ruler up so that the solid black line touches the corners, and that it's even along the edge. So along here it needs to be even. Take your mechanical pencil and draw along this outside line, and then you're going to draw in this slot, and you can see that I've kept my pencil up towards the top. So try to look at that black line that they've given you, start there and go across. You don't want to go down because you'll be adding to your seam allowance, and you don't want to do that. It'll make your block too small. Once you have your lines drawn, then place your background square with a colored square right sides together. Line them up as closely as you can on all 4 sides. Stitch, and again, not exactly on the line, but just to the left of that line within the seam allowance. And then we're going to cut them apart. I cut the square apart between the 2 drawn lines, and that has given me 2 half square triangles. When we made the hourglass block, we then moved on to sew the 2 half square triangles together to make the hourglass block. This time we want this. We want just a half square triangle. So we can trim these blocks. When you make the hourglass blocks and you have these 2 half square triangles, do not trim them until you have your hourglass block constructed. Remember, when we trimmed the hourglass block, we only had maybe 1/8 of an inch. This one, the half square triangle block, you have a good 1/4 inch on each side. So you don't have to really worry about, there is no center seam line, but I kind of like judge that there's a 1/4 of an inch on each side, and then I'm going to trim these blocks and press them. What you would need to do then is to follow the directions on your pattern to put these blocks together. You can see that you alternate them, and then you will get the center which would form the ring. So it shows you how to do that there. Renee got in this pattern. It's one of the, I like these little Easy Does It. And this uses half square triangles. So you could use your 4-in-1 ruler to make this very easily. So I'm going to try this one. This is Peppermint and Holly, and it's one of those Villa Rosa designs. My friend Cheryl Becker said to punch a little hole in here and put these on a key ring, which is a really good idea. That way you don't lose them. I hope that this tutorial has been helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email and I will answer right away. If you have any comments, criticisms, suggestions, please let me know. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Monday. Take care and God bless.